respect to the Epstein records, he says it is your call about releasing them. And I understand that the department and the agency have decided to release them in cooperation with the House committee. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you're releasing them a little bit at a time. Is that correct?
We're releasing as much as we can, but we are limited by 3 different court orders, and the department went back to each of those judges to waive those court orders or have them lifted, and each of those judges declined.
Will you release all of them, or at least as many as you can?
We will release everything we are legally permitted to do so. We are continuing to work with the House on the subpoena request. We have substantially complied with it, but we will continue to release whatever we are legally permitted to do so.
Okay. I strongly encourage you to do that, Kash. This issue's not going to go away. And I think the essential question for the American people is this. They know that Epstein trafficked young women for sex to himself. They want to know who, if anyone else, he trafficked these young women to. And that's a very fair question. I want to know that answer. And I think you're going to have to do more to satisfy the American people's understandable curiosity in that regard.
Mr. Chairman, may I just respond to that? I agree, Senator. And what we have done, and just to remind folks, the Epstein case files existed in the 2 prior administrations, in the Obama administration and the Biden administration, and they didn't release anything. And there was President Trump in the first administration that renewed charges against Mr. Epstein. And I know it's a little complicated to understand, but what exists in the Epstein case files was a direct result of the limited search warrants from 2006 and 7, which hamstrung future investigations because of the non-prosecution agreement. And multiple administrations had the opportunity to look at the entirety of that case file and recommend prosecutions against anyone that was trafficked under Mr. Epstein and anyone that participated in that trafficking. And the only person to bring charges was the prior administration against Mr. Epstein. Now, I am not saying that others were not trafficked and others were not involved. What I am telling you is that based on the information we have, and we have continuously and publicly asked for the public to come forward with more information. If there is, we'll look at it. But based on credible information, we have released all credible information, and the information that the Department of Justice and the FBI never releases is information on investigations that are not credible. And we don't release the names of victims who weren't credible, but in the same time, we don't release the names of victims who were credible. And so that's by law. And so the information we are releasing now is historic, and it is also to the maximum capacity that the law allows. And I know that's not going to satisfy many, many, many people. But if they wanted it done right, then the investigation from its origination should have been done right, and he should not have been given a get-out-of-jail-free card to do jail on the weekends for 12 hours a day, and he should have been investigated fully for the entirety of his crime and criminal enterprise, not just from 1997 to 2001.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Mr.
Mr. Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, thank you for being here today. You'll recall well in January at your confirmation hearing before this committee, I raised the prospect of politically motivated retaliation, and you promised me, as you did other members of this committee, quote, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard and no one will be terminated for case assignments. You went on to tell me, quote, all FBI employees will be protected against political retribution. And you assured one of my colleagues that you would honor the internal review process of the FBI. I'm not going to mince words. You lied to us. In the short time that you've been FBI director, you've presided over a rash of retaliatory firings. 3 FBI agents have recently sued you. They are FBI agents with 60 years between them of distinguished service, rescuing hostages, saving kids from predators, dismantling drug cartels, and their allegations, their civil allegations, are a searing indictment of your tenure as FBI director. But it's not just those three. The FBI Agents Association has said that your actions, quote, distract agents from their work, foster fear that their assignments could cost them their careers, either now or under the next administration, and increase the risk of criminal and national security threats by undermining unity and morale within the Bureau, end quote. This association, as you know, is voluntary. It represents 14,000 members, 90% of all the active agents. These are your employees saying that your performance has been unqualified and unfit. And there is mounting evidence that these retaliatory firings were the result of direction from the White House. There have been instances in the past history of the Bureau of political interference and political direction from the director's office, but not the kind of institutional interference that we're seeing from the White House right now. I'm going to ask you, has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
I completely disagree with your entire premise that I have lied or am misleading the FBI. If I were, the results that I announced today by the men and women of the FBI and the historic records we are doing to keep this country safe would not be possible. The men and women of the FBI are responding to our leadership and this administration's priorities. The only way people get terminated at the FBI is if they fail to meet the muster of the job and their duties. And that is where I will leave it. And you accusing me of lying is something I don't take lightly, but I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with you.
Well, let me just ask you to answer my question. Has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
Generally speaking, we always discuss with the White House, OMB, during the budget process, how many personnel we need, who we need where,
Answer is yes.
for
Have
budgetary
you been
purposes
directed
and
to
real.
fire people, agents, because they participated in investigations of the president?
I don't receive directions to do that.
Has anyone
I make the
suggested it?
decisions.
Has anyone asked you to do it? The best information is, yes, you've taken suggestions and direction from the White House in firing qualified agents.
Any termination at the FBI was a decision that I made based on the evidence that I have as a director of the FBI, and it's my job, and I'm not going to shy away from it. And as you stated, those are allegations, and that is an ongoing litigation. So they'll have their day in court, so will we.
The allegations are not just in that lawsuit, Director Patel, and I think your testimony confirms that, in fact, you've taken direction from the White House
I don't.
in
It
those
does not.
retaliatory firings.
It literally
Because
does
you've
not.
acknowledged that, in fact, they have been in contact with you about personnel decisions.
The
Let me-
White
let me
House
move
has
on.
been, do not put words in my mouth, we're on the record. The White House, like any administration, contacts its agencies on the budgeting process and where it needs personnel and where the mission priorities are. That always happens. If they didn't do that, they would be abdicating the responsibility to law enforcement. I will always work with my partners in the chain of command at the Department of Justice and the White House to ensure that this FBI is delivering the results we are delivering, to include the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history, to include the most fentanyl seizures in modern U.S. history, to include the most lives saved and the most children found in
Just
modern
asked
U.S.
you,
history. That is a working FBI. That is not a failing FBI.
Let's move on to a related area. In White House discussions, have you been asked or directed by the White House or others to engage in a crackdown on political groups or organizations, nonprofits, after the murder of Charlie Kirk?
To direct at political organizations? No. I've been asked by my chain of command to properly root out criminal activity wherever it is in whatever investigation we are conducting, and that's what we're doing.
Have those distinctions about whom you're going to target been based on direction from the White House?
Nobody gives me a list on who to target. My targeting list is from the men and women at the FBI.
Have you talked about investigating certain groups, nonprofits, or foundations or institutions?
Whatever those investigations are, they're ongoing, and I'm not going to get into those.
Have you used polygraphs to determine loyalty of agents?
No.
Have you committed that you will respect the First Amendment rights of agents?
I have wildly committed to respecting the First Amendment rights of agents, but at the FBI, you have to balance your First Amendment rights with your mission.
Have you imposed any sort of loyalty test in the course of using polygraphs or in any of the other personnel decisions?
Polygraphs have been utilized at the FBI for decades. They will continue to be utilized in the fashion by the professionals that administer them.
Have you asked under the polygraph test about individuals' loyalty or about their voting records or any kind of past statement?
Just to make it abundantly clear, I don't tell the professionals how to conduct polygraphs or what questions to ask. They make those decisions. And I, as the director of the FBI, never ask anyone who they voted for.
Have you investigated donors to a political party simply because they are donors?
Simply based on that fact alone, no.
Have you investigated donors for another reason?
Many donors may be involved in criminal enterprises and criminal activities, and those individuals will be investigated.
Can you commit to make public the Epstein files that so far have not been released if this committee is able to review them on a classified basis?
I think this is an important distinction. The Epstein case file is not classified, to my understanding. So we are providing what we legally can, and we are going to give Congress what we are legally permitted to do so to the maximum extent of the law.
Will you enable the chairman and the ranking member to review them on a classified basis?
That doesn't make any sense. If the material in the Epstein file is not classified, there is no basis for a
Well, it
classified
would
review.
protect the confidentiality of them if they were able to review them on a classified basis.
If anyone in this room can get the multiple district court judges to lift their court protective orders in the ceilings, we will happily provide you with more information.
Are you in favor of merging the DEA and the ATF?
That's not something for me to comment on.
Well, those agencies work with you, don't they?
With me, not for me.
Are you in favor of orienting the FBI toward a national police function as opposed to the enforcement of federal law?
The FBI does enforce federal law across the country. That's what we do.
But isn't it a fact that you have told the leadership of the FBI that you view it as moving toward a local and state police function?
No, we are prioritizing working with our local and state partners, and they will tell you that that has never happened with this much engagement in the history that they have been serving as local law enforcement officers. I believe local cops are the best intelligence source and the best understanding of their communities, and I folded in my FBI agents under that direction to work with them to get the job done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For the fourth time today, I want to remind people that my oversight has made clear that Director Wray's FBI was politicized. I've released a trove of records to prove it, not only today, but in past days. I've also said some FBI personnel who have been fired, retaliated against my whistleblowers, and I don't remember my Democratic colleagues defending my whistleblowers when their careers were ruined. Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into the thrust of my comments and questions, Director, I want to thank you. In our meetings prior to your confirmation, during your confirmation, we talked about your desire to get more agents out into the field, out of Washington, and take on violent crime. and you fulfilled that. St. Louis received the largest permanent per capita infusion of FBI agents anywhere in the country. And I know it's not only an isolated event, but we certainly appreciate your honoring your commitment to do that. And I know there's a lot of great opportunities ahead to take on violent crime, which you've highlighted many of the successes in your introductory comments. It's obviously no secret that this hearing takes place in the wake of a horrific American tragedy, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. For those of us who knew him, I know you did too. It's still sort of difficult to put into words what a tragic loss that is, not just for his family, but for our country, for free speech, for a belief that we can have a free exchange of ideas. And he was quite literally shot in the throat in an attempt to silence him and take his life. And so you have this task now of this investigation. There's been an arrest. But I think that we face an even larger crisis that law enforcement alone can't tackle alone. It's a crisis that is culminated in the assassination of Charlie. But it doesn't end there. It's I think every bit present right now, and the challenge is greater than quite frankly, I would have imagined. Seeing some of the comments that have taken place after the assassination, and something that I think as a country we have to reckon with. And it's something deeper, much deeper than a rejection of law and order or the norms of civil society. We've entered a very dangerous time, I think, in our country. And that should be clear to everyone. Political violence is a sign of a deep and corrosive sickness in any society. But in America today, the problem is just not political violence in the abstract. It is the specific kind of political violence which is overwhelmingly driven by a specific set of actors and groups. None of this emerged out of thin air. Over the past week, leaders from across the political spectrum have come out and forcefully condemned Charlie's murder and political violence more broadly. For that, we're all very grateful. We should be grateful. There have been calls to unite and come together in the wake of Charlie's murder, and I want to do that. I do. Someday I pray that we can be united as a country again and go forward together as a one people and under one flag, but we are not united. Upstream from the dehumanization and demonizing political violence and rhetoric tearing apart our country is a divide on how we view America and Americans. Is America good? Is America evil? Is there something inherently special about Western civilization, or is this 2,000-year project rotten to the core? And if it is something worth fighting for, which I believe, how do we do it? With words and ideas like Charlie did, or with firebombs and assassins' bullets? Political violence is always wrong. Period, full stop. It doesn't matter which side, in the name of any ideology or cause, it's wrong. But in America today, political violence is not a problem that falls equally upon both sides. We have to be honest about this. We must reject an attempt to paint it as some kind of random phenomenon with no particular creed or ideology, a kind of spontaneous insanity, which takes place outside of any broader social context and has no pattern at all. That's wrong. So free speech, yes. Political violence, no. But we have to be honest about what's happening. Already, we're hearing people talk about Charlie's assassination in those terms. We're told that we can't possibly know what drove a killer to plan and carry out a murder of the most prominent conservative activist in America. But that's a lie. We do know. The facts are plain and clear, and we have to speak truth in this moment, or there's no other side of the mountain. The vast majority of Americans are against political violence, but there is a vocal, active minority that encourages and celebrates it, and that minority is overwhelmingly on the left. Just last week, a YouGov poll found that a full 25% of those people who describe themselves as very liberal say it can be justified for citizens to use violence to achieve political goals. Less than 3% of very conservative Americans say the same. That's too many. That is 3% too many. But we are lying if we think that this is a both sides thing. It's not. We have to confront it. And you're going to have an important job of rooting out these terrorists. This is an ideology that runs very deep. The numbers are virtually identical to the ones I just noted when it comes to whether or not it's okay to celebrate the deaths of people whom we disagree with. And while large majorities in both parties were opposed to celebrating political violence, Democrats overall were nearly twice as likely as Republicans to believe that it is usually or always acceptable to celebrate the death of a public figure they oppose. What in the hell is going on? Earlier this year, a poll found that more than 55% of people on the left believed that it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Donald Trump. These are not just some abstractions on a page. These are our fellow citizens. How can we come together with people who believe these things? We've all seen the flood of posts on social media over the past week, not just a fringe few, but thousands upon thousands of people gleefully celebrating a father of two young children getting gunned down in broad daylight. I wish I wouldn't have seen that video. I wish my kids would not have seen that video. Blue Sky, the left-wing alternative to X, was so overwhelmed with these posts that the platform was forced to issue a statement warning its users to stop glorifying the murder. And it wasn't just random social media trolls. It was journalists, elite college professors, and even politicians, all but saying Charlie's assassination was justified because of what he thought, because of what he said. We saw the flood of hit pieces, the most powerful media outlets in the nation dishonestly attacking and villainizing Charlie for the most vicious possible terms. How can you ask us to unite under that? There can be no unity between good and evil. Somebody has to win this thing. And as a country, we have to absolutely reject it. And don't tell me it's both sides. It didn't happen in a vacuum. Over the past decade, we've seen an explosion of political violence, not just one-off lone wolf attacks, but organized, systemic political violence at a mass scale. It is not organic. It is the offspring of a dark and clandestine system funded in part with our own tax dollars, winning with a large network of foundations, NGOs, activist organizations, and front groups. This system lurks behind every radical leftist movement in our nation today. The George Soros empire has financed a vast ecosystem of radicals, all working together, dropping off bricks at riots to unleash a tidal wave of violently anarchists on our streets and to prop it up in an army of researchers and experts and journalists and propagandists who downplay the political violence.
What he's doing is serious.
I'm going to ask you, because I don't have a ton of time,
The opposite of what we should be doing as a committee.
and I would point out, we've heard years of the left, their loudest voices calling anyone on the right extremist MAGA Republicans, fascists, Nazis, an existential threat to democracy. Check yourself. And don't give me this both sides bullshit. Mr. Director, I want to ask you. Tell me if each one of the following perpetrators or alleged perpetrators were acting from a left-wing or right-wing political violence. The man who tried to kill Republican congressman at the Congressional baseball practice, nearly killing House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Left-wing or right-wing violence?
Sir, I believe it was a left-wing ideology.
Okay. Burned down cities during the Summer of Love in the George Floyd riots. Left-wing violence or right-wing violence?
Sir, I'll rely on you on these. I don't have off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Okay. Left-wing. The Waukesha Christmas Parade massacre. Left-wing or right-wing violence? Left-wing. The Lee Zeldin stabbing attempt. Left-wing or right-wing? Left-wing. The Covenant School shooting in Nashville. Left-wing or right-wing? Left-wing. The Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt on President Trump. Left-wing or right-wing? Left-wing. The Trump International West Palm Beach assassination attempt, left wing. The Abundant Life Christian school shooting, left wing. The United Care CEO's murder, left wing. Tesla's burned, keyed, damaged, firebombed, left wing, left wing. The murders at the Israeli embassy, left wing. The ICE facilities firebombed, left wing. The Minnesota Catholic school shooting, left wing. The anti-white Charlotte and North Carolina stabbing, left wing. The attempted Utah News State firebombing, left wing. And now, of course, the culmination of this vile trend, a left-wing assassination of Charlie Kirk. So don't give me this both sides. If we want to get to unity, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Free speech, yes. Political violence, no. But let's be honest.
Senator Hirano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, just like the rest of the federal government, there have been significant personnel changes at the FBI since President Trump took office. I want to better understand the scope of the turnover and the changes occurring at the FBI. Since January 2025, how many FBI employees have retired, resigned, been fired, or otherwise separated from employment? I need a number.
We'll get you a number.
What is the number? You don't have it?
Not off the top of my head, and I want to get you the right number.
Would it surprise you to know that it's probably in the thousands, like 5,000?
I don't think that number's
Well,
accurate.
you don't know. Next question. How many special agents or analysts have left or been fired from the FBI since January 20th, 2025?
Say, we will get you the numbers, and anyone that retires is of their own volition, and anyone that is terminated at the FBI, as I've said before, is done so because they have failed to meet the standards and uphold their loyalty and oath to the
Yeah, so
Constitution.
you say. Next question. How many executive assistant directors, or special agents in charge have left or been fired from the FBI since January 20th, 2025?
Again, people leaving on their own accord or terminations were done by the standards set at the FBI that have been carried out
With this question, I'm getting
consistently.
to the leadership of the FBI, and you don't have that answer. Next question. Which field office, division, or directorate has lost the most personnel since January 2025? And do you have the answer to that question?
Yeah, actually, every single field office in the country, including Hawaii, has received a plus-up of FBI agents because we're pushing them out to the field.
Okay, so you're telling me that no field office, division, or directorate has lost any personnel since January 20th, 2025? That's your answer?
In Hawaii, there's been a plus-up. In every single state that I'm looking at, we have allocated a plus-up for field offices across the country so that the FBI can continuing the historic achievements it's done in these last 7 months. When you're talking about firings, you're looking for a media hit and a fundraising clip, and I'm not going to give it to you.
It doesn't matter under what basis they left. I just want to know how many have left. And I think your testimony is nobody has left. Next question.
Nope,
Which
that's
field-
not my testimony. You asked it one time, I answered it one time. You didn't get the answer you wanted for your clips.
Next
So you keep
question.
asking it, and I told you I'd get you the numbers, but you can keep asking it.
Which field office, division, or directorate has gained the most personnel since January 2025? You noted that there have been plus-ups, so which offices have received these plus-ups?
The greatest allocation that I believe was given to California and then Florida.
Where were those offices?
California and Florida.
Thank you. Director Patel, you often refer to FBI agents as cops. All of us, Democrats and Republicans, support the police officers who keep our communities safe. But while our states, cities, counties, and towns all employ police officers to protect our communities, Congress has empowered and equipped the FBI to take on missions that local police cannot, especially taking on terrorists, hackers, and spies. I'd like to assess how well the FBI is able to handle its specialized missions under your leadership. The FBI is the nation's lead federal law enforcement agency for investigating and preventing acts of domestic and international terrorism, and yet the executive assistant directors in charge of the FBI's national security and intelligence branches were both forced out at the beginning of the year. Who replaced them in those positions?
Excellent qualified personnel to lead the mission of arresting 23,000 violent criminals this year alone. That's twice as many as
The people
before.
who took the places of
I'm not
the-
going to give you any names so you can attack them.
Why not?
So you can attack them. I'm not doing that. The
You're not
people
gonna
sitting
give
in
me the
those seats
names
are
of-
extremely qualified to handle the job. We
You're not
would
gonna
not
give
have
me
the
the names
results.
of
We would-
personnel who
We would
should
not
be
have the
on your
reduction
website.
of
Fine,
violence in the
moving
state
on.
of Hawaii if we did not allocate the
Earlier
resources we
this
did.
year, FBI counterterrorist special agents and investigators were reassigned to assist with immigration enforcement. Reportedly, these counterterrorism experts were returned to the jobs they trained for in late January after Iran threatened to retaliate for our strikes on their nuclear facilities. Have those experts remained in the jobs they trained for since that time? Yes or no?
FBI agents' primary responsibility is exactly what they are assigned to do. We always work with our
So since they
interagency part.
returned to their positions,
If you're not
are
going to
they
let
still
me
in
answer,
those
why don't you
positions?
just do your soliloquy in the 4.5 minutes you have
I
left?
am not asking for a soliloquy. It's just a yes or no. Are those people who were returned to their jobs still on those jobs? Yes or no?
They never left.
What was that?
They never left their primary job. It is a surge of resources in law enforcement working with the interagency to combat violent crime and reduce
They were
violent
never-
crime in
okay, they were never
historic
reassigned to do
proportions.
That's your testimony. Okay, Director Patel, the FBI is also the lead federal agency for investigating cyber attacks and
Yes.
cyber intrusions, both by foreign nation states and by non-state hacker groups. Since President Trump's inauguration, the executive assistant director in charge of the criminal and cyber branch and the head of the FBI's cyber division have both left the FBI. What are the names of the people who replace them in those positions?
The cyber branch is one of the most impressive at the FBI. 409 arrests this year, 169 convictions. That's a 42% increase from the same time last year.
It's that
So
branch,
any
Mr.
suggestion that
Patel.
the FBI cyber division is not operating at full capacity and better than ever before, the leadership at the branch is implementing these changes necessary to attack the cyber and ransomware infrastructure operators
You
from
know
Iran,
why
China,
they're
and
important? I
Russia.
want to know who has those positions, since the people who originally were there,
Supremely
are no longer
qualified
there.
individuals have those positions.
are they?
Supremely qualified
Who
individuals.
are they? What are the names?
You're not
You
getting
don't
them.
know. Special agents who investigate cybercrime were also reassigned for immigration enforcement. Have those expert investigators returned to their duties? Yes or no?
All agents remained on their primary duties while surging to allocate resources for interagency operations to the Homeland Security task forces across this country.
So are you,
Am I what?
see, I'm not getting the yes or no answers. I get all this explanation, so there you go.
No, you get the work that
Are
the men
you
and women of the
planning
FBI are doing. And you don't want that.
Additional personnel cuts to the cyber division in the future?
The only people that will be terminated at the FBI will be those that violate their oath of office or fail to meet the high standards at the FBI.
Director Patel, the FBI is meant to be the tip of the spear in combating terrorism against the United States from both foreign and domestic sources. It's also our lead agency in fighting the hackers who target our businesses and critical infrastructure. But instead of a specialized role fighting these kinds of terrorists, hackers, and spies, you have the FBI playing the role of local police and helping with immigration enforcement. I'm going to move on to my, you've been asked some questions about changes to your hiring standard, and including college degrees and possibly the age. But, one question I had is, that you are now requiring applicants to be able to do a certain kind of pull-ups, which a lot of women cannot because of physiological differences. Are you requiring these kinds of pull-ups?
We are requiring a physical program at BFTC at Quantico because FBI agents carrying guns in the field have to chase down bad guys and do really hard work. The physical fitness standards of those agents
So
are
are
being
you requiring
appropriately
these
assessed.
kinds of pull-ups?
We are requiring everybody to pass the 1811 standards at BFTC. If you want to chase down a bad guy
Excuse me,
and put
the
him in
reason I
handcuffs, you
ask-
better be able to do a pull-up.
The reason I ask is that there are concerns about whether or not being able to do these kinds of harsh pull-ups is really required of FBI agents.
Doing one
Anyway,
pull-up
Mr.
is not
Patel,
harsh,
I
and there are
am
always
gravely
medical
concerned.
exemptions to that.
I am gravely concerned by the state of the FBI under your control. And in fact, you are willing to take a cut on your agency of almost $500 million. So the FBI is losing dedicated employees, decades of expertise and specialization, leading to loss to early retirements, firings, and reassignments to immigration enforcement or conducting local police work. Thousands have already left. For as long as you remain as the head of the FBI, I fear the number of departures and summary firings will continue to grow. Mr. Patel, before the vote on your nomination of this committee, I noted that your most significant qualification, this is not just something that I noted, but others, your most significant
Actually gets this place going.
qualification was your 100% loyalty to President Trump. And I fear that that continues to be the motivating factor in your position as FBI director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Director Patel, did you have
Yes.
anything you wanted to say now?
That is an entire falsehood. You can delete my 16 years of government service to multiple administrations all you want. The fact is that I was a public defender. I was a national security prosecutor. I was a House intelligence staffer. I was a deputy director of intelligence. I was a chief of staff to the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Defense. I led the counterterrorism missions for the White House. Those are just some of the jobs I held in my 16-year career. There was no loyalty then. There's no loyalty now to anything but the Constitution.
Senator Brett.
Yes. Well, before I begin, I want to thank Senator Hirono for what she said, acknowledging that there are physical differences between men and women, talking about that women wouldn't be able to do as many pull-ups, and I think that she was making a case here that there should be different standards. There's a thing called Title IX, and this is why we continue to say we should have biological men and men's sports and biological women and women's sports. And so I look forward to utilizing that to talk to all of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Maybe they will stand with us in helping us protect women's sports. I think she made a great argument there for it. Moving on to today, Director Patel, thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to making sure that America is safe again. Thank you for doing that coast to coast and within our cities. I certainly look forward to talking about that and talking about your historic gains in these areas. But I would be remiss if I didn't begin my questioning with you about the horrific events that we have seen over the last week. Obviously, our heart breaks. Not only for Erica and Charlie's two children and for parents and families, but for America and for those of us who knew him, you being chief among those. So just my sincere condolences and thank you for the steps that you and the FBI have taken to make sure that we have someone within custody and we're going to be able to move forward with that. But if you look over the last, since last summer alone, we had 2 assassination attempts on the president. We've had an arson attack on the governor of Governor Shapiro there in Pennsylvania. You have the murder of the state representatives, Melissa Hortman and her husband in Minnesota, along with the shooting of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. Several anti-Semitic attacks, several attacks on Christians that were noted by Senator Hawley. We had the killing of 2 Israeli embassy staffers here in D.C., the June firebombing in Colorado. We could go on, and we saw a culmination, as Senator Schmidt said, with the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk last week. I appreciate you committing to both Senator Hawley and Senator Kennedy, talking about making sure that all that are involved are held accountable. I think that is critically important, and I think that America needs that transparency. I want to read you some words of Vice President J.D. Vance. He said, "If we want to stop political violence like what happened to Charlie Kirk, we have to be honest about the people who are celebrating it and the people who are financing it. My question to you is, in light of Charlie's murder and all of the things that we have just referenced and have been talking about today, what steps is the FBI taking to more aggressively crack down on those who promote, encourage, finance, fund these types of engagements and this type of political violence?
Thank you, Senator, for your kind words. So in terms of how we crack down on the root cause of this violence, for now putting aside the ideological motivations and how they got there, the monetary issue is a real issue. And as I've said before, we follow the money. So we work with our partners at the Treasury Department to trace where the money came from, how these individuals paid for the training they received or the platforms they were using, and also how these individuals collectively got together in whatever groups they were on whatever social media sites they were on, to utilize clickbait to make money
Bingo.
for their ideology. And so to trace all of those, we are using, not just in Charlie's investigation, but others, lawful process and serving 2703D orders on any entity that is related in any way financially to any of these criminal acts of violence. And we are going to hold them accountable with our partners at the Department of Justice.
Excellent. I would love to stay abreast of that, and just, we must get to the bottom of it. We must follow the money. Someone is funding this discourse. Do you believe, obviously there are people here, unfortunately American citizens, that may be engaged in that, but do you also believe that some of this may be coming from overseas?
Yes.
Okay, let's get to the bottom of it, and let's make it stop.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask you about the Dobbs decision. So we know that it was leaked in May of 22, and then we had the Marshal Service say we found nothing in January of 23. I find that absolutely mind-boggling, that we can't figure out who leaked that opinion. We know it was done in attempts to undermine the process, and then the intimidation of the justices occurred after that. Tell me what you can do as FBI director to help us get to the bottom of what happened and actually hold someone accountable for their actions.
So I can't speak to what the marshals did and how they conducted their investigation. I can tell you, generally speaking, the FBI has taken over the investigation on the leak because it was such a detrimental leak.
So you commit to getting to the bottom of it.
We are utilizing the full resources of the FBI as we usually do on leak investigations, and we will make sure our results are public at the appropriate time.
We need answers. I want to talk about child sexual exploitation. Thank you for making protecting our youth your top priority. We know that that is the greatest gift that we have. That is our greatest treasure here in the United States, is the next generation. And finally, we have an FBI director that is putting that at the top of his list. Can you tell me the steps and the different initiatives? I've heard you talk about a couple of them. You've mentioned 764 amongst other things. Tell me what you're doing, and specifically, I want to know about when it comes to sextortion. So as a parent who is raising children right now, teenagers, and you're looking at what's happening, whether people are snapping photos and then what's happening online, I have had a number of parents sit in front of me telling me terrible, heartbreaking stories about their children ultimately taking their own life because of being blackmailed. I want to know, what steps are you taking to get to the bottom of that and to absolutely end this? If this were happening in a storefront, Mr. Director, that store would be shut down, no matter where it was, coast to coast. And yet we continue to allow these things to happen, and we've got to have a more targeted approach when we're looking at this. And so what are you doing to protect children, and specifically sextortion?
So in our VCAC initiative, our Violent Crimes Against Children is our umbrella enterprise operations hub for things like Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Not Forgotten and Operation Justice. And in things like that, those are producing the results that I told you about. 1,500 child predators arrested, 300 human traffickers arrested, 4,700 children identified and saved, a 35% increase from year to date last year alone. But specifically on your sextortion question, Senator, that is a problem that we are seeing explode on generative AI in private sector and social media companies. And what we're doing is engaging with NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children, because this one stat alone should probably cause great pause. They have seen a 1,325% increase in generative AI leading to sextortion and child sexual abuse. That cannot be countermanded by the FBI alone. We have embedded people at NIPMIC and have a great partnership with them. But what we need to do is what we did in the month of May, and we're doing it over and over again. We arrested 400 individuals in 1 month in 1 month search.
Wow,
These
thank you.
individuals have prioritized. The agents and intel analysts have never left that mission. They're doing multiple missions at the same time. That's what the FBI is called upon to do day in and day out, and we won't stop doing two things at once. But we need help from social media companies. We need help from the private sector and the internet service providers that allow this generative AI to be hosted on their platforms. We have got to get a resolution on that with our partners in Congress and the private sector.
Well, we are definitely committed to working on that. I know the people up here. So you let us know what tools you need, and I know we've got several ideas that we look forward to pushing forward. In my remaining 2 minutes, I want to talk to you about your historic results when it comes to crime. In particular, we've seen here in DC just a total transformation. You mentioned earlier 60% down in gun crime, 70% down in carjackings. You said 50% down in homicides, to name a few. We have a success story, and we appreciate President Trump's leadership on all of this. We have a success story in Alabama where the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, so ALEA, they just marked their 1-year anniversary of the Metro Area Crime Suppression Unit. There in Montgomery, it is a coordinated effort with ALEA, with our Attorney General, with Montgomery PD, and our sheriff, Montgomery County sheriffs. They've seen a 30% drop in violent crime and a 19% drop in overall crime. So it is actually producing results. It's this type of interagency connectivity that I think ultimately is going to lead us to safer cities and safer streets. I know that you are committed to that, committed to working with your partners. You said earlier you've elevated sheriffs and police officers there to the 7th floor. Thank you for doing that. I am grateful for the men and women of Alabama in uniform that have made this happen, and want to know how is the FBI working to collaborate in these types of ways across our country to make sure that we have even greater success stories to tell.
Well, the collaboration's happening at our Redstone Arsenal in Alabama. We bring 4,000 students through our Redstone Arsenal for training every year. In terms of our future plans, in the next few years, we will bring 13,000 students a year through Alabama's Redstone Arsenal. And by students, I mean FBI employees, I mean sheriffs, I mean police chiefs, I mean cops, I mean intel analysts, because that is their future gem of how we're going to train local law enforcement. And we're so thankful for the dedication of resources to that facility. And I encourage everyone to go down there and take a look, because if you want to see where the FBI is going and how we're going to train the future, it's happening at Quantico and Redstone.
We are very proud of it, and thank you so much for your leadership.
Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I want to start off where we left off last time. I asked you whether you had any knowledge or discussions about removing FBI officials and installing political personnel before you were confirmed to that position. And I wonder, did you then understand or have conversations with the White House about the intentions to do so?
Before I was confirmed,
Yes, sir.
did I have discussions with the White House to remove FBI personnel?
Yes.
No.
So you're saying that you had no discussions with the White House before you were in the position about the removal of any personnel from the agency?
As I was preparing for my confirmation hearing, I had numerous discussions involving the type of people that would be employed, and that those that were failing to meet the mark at the FBI would no longer be employed if I were
And I'm
confirmed.
assuming that mark had to do with loyalty to the Trump administration.
No, you're wrong.
Okay. I'd like to revisit another subject from that hearing. Did you testify, you did testify before the grand jury that President Trump had declassified the documents at issue in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Is that correct?
I don't have the grand jury transcript. That's why I released it. Whatever it says is the best evidence.
You know, that's what you said to Senator Whitehouse, that your grand jury testimony was publicly released. It has not been. In fact, in July, a court denied a news outlet's bid to get that transcript. But the court said quite clearly that you are free to discuss your grand jury testimony. So I ask you again, did you testify before the grand jury that President Trump declassified the documents at issue in the Mar-a-Lago classified document case.
And that is why I took your invitation to work with the department and the court to have that transcript released. And the transcript is the best evidence of what I said then.
So you're saying right now this committee can have access to what you said before the grand jury?
To whatever was released. Under my understanding, Senator,
So
that the
hold
Department
on,
of
hold on.
Justice
You and I both
released.
understand the law. Let me finish. I understand under Rule 6 of the Federal Rules of Procedure, a grand jury witness, in this case you, is not barred from sharing their grand jury testimony. This is an oversight hearing. This is germane to your integrity and credibility. You know right now whether or not you testified that President Trump declassified the documents at issue in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Why are you refusing to answer that simple yes or no question right now?
Because the premise of your question is inaccurate, and
The
that
premise,
is
there is
why.
no premise to my question, but trying to get to an order of what is truth or not.
How do you
did
know
you
what,
or
how,
did you,
how do you know what was asked in the grand jury if you weren't there?
Mr. Patel, this is a mockery you're making of this hearing and simple questions.
It's a
So let me
simple
move on.
question. If you have a
Mr. Patel,
transcript, you
during
can
your
read the question,
nomination,
but you don't have
hearing,
it.
you promised that, quote, all FBI employees will be protected against political retribution. When I asked you, are you aware of any plans or discussions to punish in any way, including termination, FBI agents or personnel associated with the Trump administration, you explicitly said under oath that you were not aware of any plans to punish FBI agents associated with criminal investigations of Donald Trump. I don't believe you were truthful. Firing FBI employees based solely on the cases that they are investigating, their case assignments, is illegal, and you know that. A new lawsuit that's been discussed numerous times, filed by 3 FBI officials, alleges that you carried out Donald Trump's campaign of retribution, in quotes, against FBI employees for, quote, failure to demonstrate sufficient political loyalty. One of those plaintiffs has been discussed today, Brian Driscoll. Now, we know 20 years of distinguished service to the FBI before you terminated him. Special agent in charge of FBI's Newark field office, where he operated with distinction. Medal of Valor winner, Shield of Bravery awards. He's a patriot. You terminated Driscoll via a letter dated October 8th, 2025, and in that letter you said that you were firing him pursuant to Article 2 of the Constitution. Well, you're not the President of the United States, and so I'm wondering under what authority you were allowed to terminate him.
That matter is under litigation, and I'm not able to discuss it.
Okay, well, discuss this. Did you have discussions with Stephen Miller about firing this particular person or about his continuance in the FBI?
Not that I recall.
How often do you speak to Stephen Miller?
Frequently on our Homeland Security task forces.
You frequently talk with Stephen Miller about subjects other than Homeland Security Task Force issues, correct?
I frequently talk to Mr. Miller about Homeland Security task forces.
Has Stephen Miller ever given you his opinions on how to run your agency?
Mr. Miller's interagency operations are invaluable to the FBI. That's what we talk about.
So you frequently discuss your job and your responsibilities with Stephen Miller and Pam Bondi, I imagine, as well.
Absolutely. She's the Attorney General.
Understood. Okay. Donald Trump promised to make us all safer. You have pushed out senior FBI agents with decades of knowledge and experience. In fact, this is the first time in FBI history that neither the director nor the deputy director have any experience with the FBI. You've shifted the agency's priorities primarily to pursuing Donald Trump's immigration enforcement agenda. According to ICE data, the Cato Institute, which is a conservative think tank, found that 20% of all agents have been diverted from their work to assist ICE immigration enforcement. 20%. Part of this operation is the work of mass law enforcement who jump out of cars, snatch people off streets at churches, schools, and their jobs and hospitals. Have there been any FBI agents who investigate crimes against children that have been assigned to immigration enforcement, yes or no?
The premise of what you say is
Have there
entirely
been
false.
any FBI agents
No,
who investigate foreign domestic terrorism?
You don't get to say the America is not safer under this
I am
leadership.
not saying
America
that.
is
You're
safer
making
because of the work of the
presumption-
FBI.
You're making
are
a presumption
doing.
of premise.
4,700 children.
Sir,
We have
you
seized 6,000 weapons and
you are not
23,000 violent
denying
felons have
that
been
FBI
arrested.
agents who investigate human trafficking have been reassigned to immigration enforcement. You are not denying that FBI agents who are on the task force that fight against Russian oligarchs have not been reassigned. Public Corrections Squad reassigned. People who defend us, defend children reassigned. You're not denying that. I've seen you
FBI
time and
agents
time
don't
again
get reassigned.
attack my colleagues' premises of questions as a way to not answer the question. So let me end with this. I believe you have made our country weaker and less safe. I believe that we are more vulnerable to a major event, and I pray to God it doesn't happen. You've gutted the Bureau of Institutional Knowledge and Expertise. You fired or pushed out seasoned FBI officials, many with more than 20 years of experience, and were working on cases that were critical. You've been purging thousands of serious law enforcement officials who spent their careers keeping us safe, only to lower hiring standards in order to find anyone to replace them. And shockingly, you admitted in this hearing to Senator Coons that it would take 14 years to fill the vacancies at your agency. Many are the result of your purge. 20% of FBI agents are doing low-level immigration enforcement instead of their mission-critical work. You've disbanded entire task forces that stop election interference, foreign influence, public corruption. And who benefits from this? Well, corrupt people benefit from it. Criminals benefit from it. Vladimir Putin benefits from it. And it really makes me wonder who you're looking out for. It makes me think we can't trust you as a nation. You swear to release the Epstein files, but now you're withholding the Epstein files. You claim that you have a suspect in a serious assassination. Whoops, then you don't have a suspect. You know nothing about plans to remove FBI agents, yet you're directly involved in those plans. In the words of an ex-FBI official, you are overseeing, and I quote, generational destruction of the nation's premier law enforcement agency. Mr. Patel, in just 8 months, you have assaulted the institutional integrity of the FBI. But I know FBI field agents. I've worked with them in Newark. No matter how truly bad you are, you can't undermine the legacy of agents who fight every day to keep us safe, but you can tarnish the integrity of the agency and undermine the agency's capacity. I believe you're failing as a leader, and that your failure does have serious implications for the safety and security of Americans and our families. We're more vulnerable to domestic and foreign attack because of your failures of leadership. I don't think you're fit to hand the Bureau, but here's the thing, Mr. Patel. I think you're not going to be around long after the oversight hearing. Because as much as you supplicate yourself to the will of Donald Trump and not the Constitution of the United States of America, Donald Trump has shown us in his first term and in this term, he is not loyal to people like you. He will cut you loose. This may be the last time I have a hearing with you because I don't think you're long for your job. But I'm going to tell you this, I pray for you. I pray for you that you can step up and defend your oath, defend the Constitution, and do a much better job of defending this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to say anything?
Yes,
at this
sir.
point?
That rant of false information does not bring this country together. If you want to work on bringing this country, it's my time, not yours.
My
If you-
God.
if
You're
you
gonna
want to
lecture
talk
me
about,
dividing this country,
it is
I
my
follow
time.
you on your social media posts that
it is
tear
my
this country
time
apart.
to
There
address
should be a
your
unifying-
falsehoods.
Oh,
You are an
you can try
embarrassment
all
to the
you
division
want
in this country.
to not
Senator,
take
it is
my
responsibility
time.
for what
You
you
had
have
your
said.
time.
Sir, you're
Your
making
time
a
is
mockery of this
over.
committee. Sir, you don't tell me my time is over.
You
The
know how
people
far
of New
we've
Jersey
come
tell me
since
what my
you
time
tell-
is.
Senator-
You can't lecture me.
You can tell me
Sir,
my time's over?
You may be the charge of the
I'm not
FBI,
going anywhere.
but I am not afraid of you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Not afraid of you.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Senator Booker, I announced at the beginning of this meeting that this back and forth, talking over each other doesn't work. And I said if that happened, I asked Patel not to respond, and I was going to give him some time after the senator's time was up to respond. And he has the privilege to do that. uninterrupted.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
go-
one point of
Go
order.
ahead, Mr.
I've
Patel.
watched him talk over us, and you've never once criticized him for us not even being able to get our questions out.
Well,
He has been rude and disrespectful to senator after senator.
And when the senators were not giving him a chance to answer, I didn't stop the senator either. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the FBI, under my 7-month leadership, were failing this administration in this country, why do we have 23,000 violent felons arrested this year alone? A 200, a double increase from that time last year. Why is it that we have seized 6,000 weapons? Why have we found 1,500 child predators and arrested them? Why have we have 300 human traffickers in jail? Why have we found and identified 4,700 children? Why have we seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl, enough to kill a third of the American public, a 25% increase alone from last year? 88,000 kilograms of cocaine seized, 7,000 kilograms of meth seized, and that's just on our criminal operations in summer heat. How is it possible that we're taking 8 kilograms off the streets of the cities in New Jersey and preventing the deaths of 607,000 people this year alone, a failure of the FBI and my leadership? How is it that we have counterintelligence arrests already this year exceeding the numbers from the entirety of last year? 33% increase in PRC, 83% in Russia, 60% in the CI space as it relates to Iran, and we haven't even talked about CT, the southern border, the northern border.
Before Senator Cruz, I kind of feel like a broken record today. All this interest in FBI termination, yet my colleague showed no intent or interest in when my whistleblowers suffered retaliation over the past years, particularly the past 4 years. Indeed, one whistleblower has alleged that Brian Driscoll's insubordination, whether an agent is on a hot button case or not, they ought to be held accountable for misconduct and weaponization. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, it used to be